Hey everyone, welcome to our global podcast, our very first podcast. My name is Mr. Sill.
And I'm Mrs. Numair.
And we are about to take you on an awesome journey through time. Episode 1 is about to begin. Before we begin, we do have 3 awesome students that are with us today. I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Cassie.
Hi, I'm Haley.
Hi, I'm Vanessa.
And together we are the Avengers. So we need a name for this podcast, right, Mrs. Numair?
Yes. So we got some options for you.
We had 3 ideas that we were kicking around, but we'll share them with you. You can vote on them, or if you have something else you can come up with, please let the class know. So one of them I came up with was, Hey, it's history. Hey, it's history. Come on.
We have the Global Gab.
Welcome to the Global Gab. And then finally, we had the House of History. Welcome to the House of History. So decide which one you like out of those 3. Hey, it's history, the Global Gab, and the House of History. And if you can come up with your own, that would be awesome as well. All right, so today's podcast, the focus of today's journey through history is to examine the question of the impact that geography had on Mesopotamia, China, and India, right? The ancient civilizations, those river valley civilizations. So to begin, I think Cassie's going to tell us a little bit about the geography of Mesopotamia.
So the major geographical features of Mesopotamia are the Euphrates River, which that's to the west, and the Tigris River, which is to the east. They flow from hills and mountains down the marshland in south, then go into the
Persian Gulf, yeah.
Persian Gulf.
Yeah, and that's the Twin River Valley, they call it, and it forms like a shape. Do you remember what that shape was called?
It's like I kind of like a question mark, kind of.
Yeah, kind of like a question mark. Yeah, they call it a crescent. So it's like a crescent, like a croissant shape, like a crescent moon. So they call it the Fertile Crescent because all that land was extremely fertile because of those 2 rivers. All right, very good. How about in China? What do we got going on?
All right, so in China, the vast land expanses of China includes plateaus, plains, foothills, and mountains. And then there's also the Yellow River and the Yangtze River of the south.
Yeah, great pronunciation on that Yangtze River. That's excellent. Yeah, and again, 2 major rivers there in these river valleys, the Yangtze and the Yellow River. And China, it has this sort of geographic mosaic, as you mentioned, all these other features like plateaus and mountains. And then, of course, we have India. So what do we got for us?
So India stretches from alpine glaciers to the hottest rainforest on Earth. Like so many other great civilizations, the earliest Indians began their first cities on the banks of Indus River, and 3 mountain ranges create a boundary between India and the rest of Asia: Karakoram, Hindu Kush, and Himalaya.
Yeah, very good. And obviously, there's another really 2 sets of rivers here as well. We have the Indus River and then the Ganges River, the 2 main rivers of India. As you mentioned, the mountain ranges, and of course, the tallest mountain range in the world, the Himalayas. The Himalayas, you know that. And of course, the tallest mountain in the world is there. Mount, anybody? Everest, yes. Mrs. Numair climbed Mount Everest when she was 7 years old. She's the youngest person ever to climb the mountain.
Stop telling them lies.
Oh, sorry.
Come
okay. All right. I'm trying to hype you up.
We're here to learn, facts,
All right.
We'd like to know, what was the most crucial geographical feature of each early civilization?
The most crucial geographical feature for Mesopotamia was the 2 rivers, Euphrates and Tigris, because you were able to get portable water, you could fish for food, and that was like transportation stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the river was great for transportation. Some rivers weren't because they had rapids and waterfalls, and that could be pretty painful trying to get through. But most of the time, these rivers, especially the Tigris and Euphrates, were very navigable, which is a hard word for me to say. Can you say it?
Navigable.
You did a better job. Navigable. I forget it. Okay. So thanks, Cassie. All right.
Yep, Haley.
Haley.
Okay, so the two most important geographical features of ancient China were the two major rivers that flowed through central China, the Yellow River to the north and the Yangtze River to the south. These major rivers were a great source of fresh water, food, fertile soil, and transportation.
All right.
The most crucial geographic feature for India was the role that the Indus and Ganges rivers played in the earliest parts of the Indian civilization is hard to understate. From what we can understand about Harappan religious life, it seems that water and the Indus River specifically played an important role. In fact, historians have suggested that when the river began to change its course and become less predictable, that many people of Harappan and other towns in the region simply picked up and moved east to another great river.
Yeah, absolutely. I think all three of you nailed it. The river is certainly going to be like the most important geographic feature. The other thing about these rivers that would make them crucial is that they flooded. And what happened when they flooded?
There's like indoor plumbing.
Was that?
Indoor plumbing.
Okay, yeah, these guys, the people of Harappa, there's actually evidence that they had indoor plumbing to manipulate the water, right, to control the water, which is what some of them tried to do. But initially, I mean, you had all these floods, and what do floods normally do?
They like ruined their crops and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it wasn't good for like.
Yeah, they could be very, very destructive. In fact, the river in China, I think it was the Huanghe River or the Yellow River, is known as the River of Sorrows because when it flooded, it killed so many people and villages. It wiped them out and killed the people. So as much as it gave, the rivers also could take away, right? So they had to adapt to the rivers by creating irrigation systems, canals, ditches, dams, anything that they can do to control this flood from killing them, right? So thank you, river, but no thanks. We don't want the flooding, right? We want the good stuff, not the bad stuff. And this also led to calendars being developed, right? People trying to control or to predict when it might happen. But a lot of these rivers were very unpredictable in their flooding. Absolutely. So rivers definitely most important. I mean, the other things that are important are going to be the climate, right? How can you grow food if you have harsh winters or you have long winters? So all of these areas were in the temperate zone where they did have good climate seasons, good agricultural seasons to grow and harvest their crops and get them through the winter. Another factor I don't know if you guys did any research on, but is natural barriers. Any research on natural barriers? No? All right, we'll talk more about that in class, but what do you think a natural barrier is?
It's like buildup of something that blocks it.
Okay, something that blocks something. So what's a natural thing that could block people?
Vanessa, you kind of mentioned it, I think, when you were talking about the mountains in India. So they kind of, serve as one kind of natural barrier, maybe?
Maybe,
Yeah, would a mountain block people?
yeah.
Right, certainly. It's hard to get over a mountain. And so some of these places had mountains. What's another thing that would prevent people from getting through or make it difficult for people to pass through? Another geographical feature.
Like ditches and stuff like that?
Yeah, but now think of something like really long and distant and hard to travel through, and you need water.
Desert?
Yeah, you go, right? There's deserts out there. Right? So some of these areas had natural protection from mountains, deserts, sometimes oceans or seas and things like that, right? And that was nice because they wouldn't get invaders coming to their land. But some places didn't have natural barriers, like Mesopotamia, for instance, and India, and therefore they were vulnerable to people coming in and taking what's theirs, right? China is the opposite. China was isolated because they were on, the distant part of the world, and they had a plateau and the Gobi Desert that protected them as well. All right, so that's just some other things to think about. Is the power of natural barriers would be a theme that we're going to get into.
All right, and our final question for you all today. What is the most interesting fact about how geography affected your civilization?
The most interesting fact about Mesopotamia was the culture developed the first written language and religion, and since they didn't have paper back then, they used clay tablets to write like what they needed to say.
Yeah, because that's what they had available. They had clay. They didn't have a lot of trees. They didn't have them know how to make paper. So clay would be the first things that were written on, and they created the first written language, cuneiform. Nice.
All right, and what about in China?
The rivers in China, such as the Yellow River, influenced the civilization that arose in China. The Yellow River is the most important water resource for the dry north of China, playing an irreplaceable role in economic development of agriculture, and it helped with a bunch of other stuff like transportation and fertile soil and food.
Yeah, absolutely. It's called the Yellow River because of the yellow silt that drops to the bottom of it, and also when it flooded, it gave the land lots of fertile nutrients to provide for their crops. Nice.
An interesting fact about India is settlements along the Ganges River started somewhat later than those in the Indus Valley, but many still exist today as some of the most important cities in India cultural history. And the Ganges River became crucial to the beliefs of people throughout India.
Yeah, very good. As you mentioned earlier too, Vanessa, was that the reason for the decline of the Indus is really unknown, but most historians think there was probably some form of natural disaster like an earthquake or a flood, and that may have caused their ruin or at least caused them to get up and leave and go somewhere else. Right? So we talked about the flooding, how important it was, and that's just another example of it. The other thing that's important in India are the monsoons. The monsoons are heavy rains that sweep across the land, and that may have also caused their decline because maybe sometimes the monsoons were good because they brought rain, but other times they brought too much rain, and that can cause a major flood. All right, so I think we did a pretty good job, guys. How you feeling?
Good.
All right, you want to say any shout outs to your classmates right now? No? All right, they're all listening out there. But we want to thank you for listening. Mrs. Numair and I are getting pumped for the next podcast as well. And hopefully you guys will come up with a name for us because we need a name. Again, are we Hey It's History? Are we the Global Gab? Are we the House of History or something else? Let us know. And once again, I want to thank our three contestants here, Cassie, Haley, and Vanessa, for coming down and doing our very first podcast. Woo! You want to wrap
See
it
you
up?
next time.
See you next time. Au revoir.
Au revoir.